This is the moment I became the #1 Yeti in the entire world and walked away with 300k maple points. How did I get here? Why would I push a meme class this far and grind it for hundreds of hours? This is a story of relentless perseverance and improvisation. A tale that deserves more than just a footnote on a video. So now we are 14.727 when you see it.
727! 727! When you see it! When you see it!
Let's go! Let's go! He's gonna fireball like now. Oh, never mind. He's doing that. Heal, heal, heal. Okay. Maybe I can get 935. If I don't make any mistakes. Maybe. On March 16th, 2022, the Double Trouble Superstars event went live on GMS. For the first time, we get to play Yeti as a class in the temporary Yeti and Penguin world. Previously, the event format was much different, allowing players to make the Penguin class in their main world. I have fond memories of doing the old Penguin world on KMS. Clearing Penguin was a requirement, resulting in a massive traffic jam at the pre-quest, with hordes of Penguins camping the mini-bosses in Temple of Time in a hilarious chaotic spam of skills. The first iteration of the event was much more limited. Pushing past level 200 hadn't really been considered in the design, with no access to Arcane Reaver, nor any appropriate support gear to go that far. No free CRE armors meant you had to clear the bosses yourself, which was a huge challenge with how weak the event classes were. The only way you could clear within the first couple weeks was putting together a team and struggling the old school way, which would prove to be a much bigger challenge than anticipated, especially with a complete lack of experience with the intended party mechanics of these bosses. On top of all of that, this is still the era of buff freezers, and with the limited daily availability of these, we didn't get many attempts before we would run out. Not like dying was without consequences even with buff freezers, as the precious Yeti rage would deplete upon death. No auto potion on the paths didn't make the bosses any easier, having to relearn to pay attention to my HP. With no secondary weapon or emblem, obtaining enough ignore defense to even scratch the early game bosses was a challenge. Even very small sources like the ambition trait would be significant. Pink beans, counting as warriors, could ditch their free CRE weapon for a one-handed sword, allowing them to use a shield, such as the Blue Dragon shield, to get a secondary weapon. Yetis, on the other hand, counting as pirates, were stuck with only a weapon, cannon being the best pick long-term due to the class passive Yeti power reaching 6 attack speed base at level 200+. The highest EXP area available would end up being Dark World 3, which would not only be a slow grind, but also a challenge in terms of mobbing damage. The temporary world was based on regular servers, but with no trade-in. With the percent Meso passive, the Meso acquisition multiplier would max out at 200% or 3x. This is better than using Wealth Potion on regular servers, but slightly worse than maxing out your Meso multiplier with the Legion Wealth coupons. Of course, it's all limited to the base spawn on a meme class in a terrible map layout, limiting me to around 48 million Mesos per hour at just over 10k kills an hour in Dark World 3. And in practice, I was too weak to even hit those peak rates until the second half of the journey. Gear upgrades would be done through the special Meso shop, with black cubes being 2 mil each, rainbow flames at 1 mil, red flames at 500k, and spell traces for 1k. Tower of Oz would also be unavailable unlike in other regions such as MapleStory and KMS, dodging the conundrum and time sink of running the tower in the off chance of getting a good ring. Herbs and veins would go forever unharvested, as professions would not be available on Yeti nor Pinkbean, cutting wealth potions or bossing buffs out of the equation, as well as many potential gear avenues. The cash shop was also inaccessible, and so cash 2x EXP or drop coupons were out of the picture. Thanks to the 100 million mobs achievement that I had on screen all the time, we know that I killed around 1.7 million mobs during this whole journey. If we assume an average of 9k kills per hour, which might be optimistic since it took me a while to reach peak rates, we end up with close to 190 estimated hours of grinding. A lot of time also went into doing all kinds of pre-quests and niche content to obtain the gear I needed, as well as attempting bosses. The streams total around 212 hours, but since I played off-stream quite a bit, I would estimate the total to be at least 300 hours, and all of this was over the course of just under 1 month. So let us retrace our steps and watch this adventure unfold. A journey that started on a whim and ended up becoming one of my biggest achievements in this game. This is the story of how I became the #1 Yeti in the entire world. Day 0 was off-stream immediately before maintenance. Not much happened here, I just grinded to 130 and did Von Leon pre-quest. I got quite lucky on the Rose Garden dailies, getting 3 Ifia accessories, a precious haul that will speed up the process of getting my Ifia ring. With not many potable rings being available, and Gollux being a steep boss to take down on this event classes, the Ifia ring would be an obvious priority. Realistically, getting more than a reinforced Gollux piece would have taken a very well-coordinated team and a significant time investment that could have gone into grinding more Masu. The medal from the Von Leon questline was also a decent filler over having nothing in that slot. At the end of day 0, this is what my gear looked like. I had an Ifia ring, the non-potable one. I had a Silver Blossom ring, Frozen gear, Zakum face accessory, and Magnus badge, which all came from the step-up boxes. I did my theme dungeons, obtaining a Rihanna straight belt, and the Elinel face accessory. I also had a Dominator pendant from the step-up mission for doing Monster Park twice, on which I got a level reduction flame, allowing me to wear it at level 130. My stat was about 2.8k at this point. The idea of competing for the Punch King hadn't formed yet. At this point, I was simply trying to finish the event and stop at level 200. At the beginning of day 1, I decided to hold onto a couple level 120 gloves while grinding at Thanatos, planning to roll for decent sharp eyes and speed infusion later. At level 134, the grind had moved to the Star Force Banes in the Cave of Trials. After rolling 9% Masu on my inner ability, an interesting realization hit me. My percent Masu obtained in the stat window didn't move at all. With a 200% Masu passive from Yeti, this got me wondering if Masu gear was even going to work. Maybe it was gonna behave just like the inner ability. Maybe the event was simply designed around the Masu passive, with no other percent Masu sources being allowed. But as time would tell, Masu gear would indeed work, and it seemed like the Yeti Masu passive counted towards inner ability, hitting some kind of cap. I also considered doing Commercy for the accessories, but quickly discarded the idea as they ignore the fans from the boss set effect would be hard to beat without star forcing. As the Bane's grind started to slow down, I decided to start tackling the Temple of Time pre-quests. I also started thinking about going for the Wings of Fate from the Mushroom Shrine questline. Their 20 base attack and the option to get 8% crit rate or 5% attack would easily beat a Von Leon or Empress Cape, especially with no set effects being involved. Having finished Temple of Time, I moved to Kerning Tower at level 152. I held off on wearing the Fafnir weapon until level 169, thinking I couldn't spell trace it yet until I finally realized I could buy spell traces for it in the Maso shop. Next, I decided to start the Omega Sector questline. Maybe not the best idea to invest so much time into unlocking this daily boss so early, but the extra daily Maso and ambition were definitely helpful. The grind continued in Curling Tower after tracing and starring the Fafnir weapon. I decided to try my luck on inner ability, ending up with 15% drop rate unique, which I decided to keep for a while. I continued pushing levels up to 175, at which point I applied a Soul Enchanter to my weapon for a bit of extra attack. After tracing and Star Forcing to 120 total Star Force, I was able to grind in second drill hole, though only one-shotting during rage mode. At 185, the grind moved to the Swollen Stumps in Twilight Piran. This is where I finally cubed my weapon, after finally realizing I could get potential stems from the cube fragments. 38 black cubes later, I ended up with 18% attack, a decent start for mobbing damage. I was also throwing my Master and Meister cubes at my glove, hoping for a tier up to eventually roll for Sharp Eyes or Speed Infusion. As daily reset approached, I started working on clearing all the daily bosses. Normal Hilla, OmniClean, and normal Root Abyss went down relatively easily, taking 1 to 2 minutes each. I would then flame my weapon, ending up with 56 attack and 5% damage, a significant upgrade over my essentially non-existent flame. My stat was up to 3.7k at this point. Normal Von Leon was a challenge, a hilarious 10-minute struggle that was well worth the effort, as the coins allowed me to get an overall and a shoe, which I promptly upgraded. The overall would roll a 64 strength and 4 attack flame, and after 70% tracing everything, my 2-line epic frozen overall would be transfer hammered to my Von Leon. I also happened to have a shoe that revealed 10 strength bonus potential, so I decided to transfer hammer that as well, as there was no way to realistically work on bonus potentials other than getting lucky on reveal. So I cubed the main pot before transferring, rolling a lucky 9% strength potential with the first 6 mystical cubes. A sizable damage boost at this stage. The spell tracing for the shoe, on the other hand, would not be so lucky. Only hitting 4 out of 7 70% was a disappointment, so I used my expiring Innocent Scrolls for another try. This would go a lot better at 6 out of 7, finalizing my Von Leon shoe for the transfer. After pushing everything to 10 stars, my stat was already approaching 4k. I also had a golden hammer from grinding, which I promptly threw on the weapon. Normal Papulatus proved too tanky at this stage, and so I would retreat, planning to come back with more damage. I tagged along with a friend to clear Chaos Hauntel, taking longer than I had anticipated at over 5 minutes for the duo. Realizing Magnus Prequest wasn't available at all, I moved on to normal Pinkbin, taking a painful 8 minutes for my first clear. Normal Ranmaru was up next, followed by the lengthy Silent Crusade questline, which is required to unlock Arcarium. Getting through this would end up taking around 40 minutes, finally clearing AZ Arcarium just 2 minutes before reset. Silent Crusade would give me access to the various equips in the Crusader shop, boosting me to 4.18k stat with the shoulder and the belt. Finally, the Platinum Ring from the questline would become good filler for a while, a small but appreciated boost. I concluded day 1 with an easy Papulatus clear immediately after reset. The 62 leftover black cubes from the step-up missions would be used off-stream on my accessories, pushing my Dominator Pendant to unique 12% strength, Silver Blossom Ring to a lucky 18% unique, and tearing my Deocidus Earring to unique. This would mark the start of day 2 at 4.6k stat. After completing Afterlands for a small attack boost from the totems, I headed to the Fire Boars in Twilight Piran, where I would stay all the way to 194. Scrapyard is where I would push the last few levels to 200, utilizing the quest EXP for the last stretch. At this point, my stat was approaching 4.9k. Rose Garden would go on a dry spell on this day, with no iffy accessories. With the last 3 pieces of Vonleon gear in my inventory, I went through the usual process of flaming, tracing, and transfer hammering, making use of a 3-attack B-pot glove that I was saving for this occasion. I headed to Yew Garden to unlock the dailies, getting my first totem in the process. I wouldn't end up wearing this just yet, as it would break the Afterlands set effect. I ended up farming several hours to level 2 or 3, and at this stage I was still farming in Scrapyard. Not great rates at around 8k per hour, but it was part of the process of figuring out the best place to farm. The massive rates with no massive gear were, as expected, terrible, at around 23 mil an hour. Nevertheless, I would get into a routine of farming, usually around 100 mil masses, followed by a small cubing session in hopes of gaining more masso lines. This cycle of farming and cubing gear would accompany the rest of the journey. And thus, I would end day 2 at 5.3k stat. Feeling good about the Yeti grind, I decided to continue pushing to become the strongest. Day 3 would start off-stream with the completion of the NLC questline, giving me a new eye accessory, ring, and shoulder. I had also started running the alien PQ off-stream, getting a belt that I got to unique. On this day, I would switch up my farming location, intentionally sandbagging my EXP multipliers so I could stay in Forsaken excavation site longer to farm for familiars while building up my masso gear. At this stage, I would have very short cubing cycles, roughly every 100 mil, to build up my masso gear as quickly as possible. The grind continued as I hit level 205. Out of curiosity, I took a peek at the Punch King rankings at this stage, which ended up being 608 for Yeti and 638 for Pinkmin. Another cubing session would push my Dominator to Legendary, rolling my second Masso line, as well as pushing my NLC eye accessory to unique 12%. After running my daily bosses, I managed to scrape together enough Masso to throw the last few cubes in the weapon, rolling 40% IED, which is exactly what I needed for bossing. The rest of this day would be spent doing pre-quests, starting with Threads of Fate. As it would turn out, the Kurama skill can help slightly with the Punch King by clearing all the normal mobs and giving you a slightly higher score when you would otherwise be unable to clear them. I didn't actually end up using this in the winning Punch King run, but some of the other skills would end up being situationally useful, such as the Bind and Takano's healing. And of course, Showa goes hand in hand with Threads of Fate, with the Yakuza boss dropping a yarn that gives 7 closeness. Stellar Detectives would follow, as the raw ring would be quite significant for the Punch King. Running this content was clunky to say the least, not to mention having to micromanage all the achievements and items to upgrade your ring. I would continue to do this content off-stream to work towards a level 4 raw ring. I would end the day at 5.6k stat and 2 lines of Masso, feeling quite good about all the pre-quests I had gotten out of the way. I would start day 4 with a second Yew Garden totem that I got off-stream. Also off-stream, I would hit level 206 and get a raw ring from Stellar Detectives, which I would promptly upgrade to level 3. A level 1 curl ring was also in my inventory, giving me an extra iframe for future Chaos Queen runs. More alien PQ runs would get me the alien ring and earrings, which was huge progress towards completing the set. Continuing the grind, I hit level 207, and after another cubing session, I would push my alien earring to unique 14%. The alien belt would hit legendary, staying at 13% for now. The NLC ring would be upgraded to 9% unique, and the shoulder would become 12% unique. Finally, the Vonleon overall would hit unique, but I had to stop at 6% as I ran out of Masso. Later that day, I got my Yew Garden ring, filling another slot. I also worked on the Critias prequest, as reset tickets can be good backup to push for CRA gear quicker. On this day, I would finally complete my familiars, with 2 ignore defense and 2 crit rate ones. I would not push for that 3rd slot as collecting the badges becomes way too tedious. After all these upgrades, I was already approaching 6.5k stat. In a very unfortunate turn of events, I would not end up getting a good dojo run in for the week after doing 3 test runs and realizing that there's a 3 entry per day limit. Dojo is usually dominated by pink beans in this event, but I figured it was still worth a shot. Ranking rewards are also only given based on global rank and not the class specific rank, unlike in normal words. So the dojo glove is only awarded to the overall number 1 of the week. The day concluded with me working on the Lion King Castle badge to get the 2nd familiar slot, as well as throwing another hammer at the weapon, which unfortunately failed. I kicked off day 5 by hitting 208 off stream and getting the NLC ring to legendary. Many hours of grinding later, I hit 209 and went for another cubing session, rolling 2 more Meso lines on the NLC ring and the NLC eye accessory, putting me at 4 out of 5. As a result of this, I would go down to 6k stat, but it was well worth the extra Meso. After a bit more farming, I managed to finally complete my Meso gear, rolling the 5th line of Meso on my Silver Blossom ring. I also took a moment to get the Wings of Fate with a good flame by repeatedly dropping them until I got 4% all stat and 8 dex. I closed the day with yet another level up, hitting level 210. Day 6 would start with some off-stream upgrades, tiering the Wings of Fate to unique, and making a noble Ifya ring which would also get to unique. Also off-stream, I would get a pink bean belt, a key item which would end up sitting in my inventory unused until the very last few days, as I had already invested into Alien Set and I wasn't sure whether the boss set effect was worth until I tested it. This is the day I decided it was time to leave Twilight Period and start grinding in Dark World 3. Still too weak to clear perfectly, I min-maxed my mobbing damage by using Siders from Showa. Despite the subpar rates, this was an upgrade in EXP, and I would hit level 211 in no time. The first cubing session of the day was a huge success, getting the Von Leon glove to unique and rolling decent sharp highs on it. More upgrades followed, with the Wings of Fate reaching legendary and 21% strength, and the Ifya ring rolling 9% strength and 6 dex. During these early grinds, I had managed to recruit a few people to attempt CRE by asking pretty much anyone I would run into that looked like they were grinding for Punch King. This day would be our very first attempt, and oh boy, it was bad. Okay, we killed him here. Oh no, I died. Ah, my rage. Oh my god, my rage. Oh my god, no. Wait, who's healing it? Where's the boss? What? What just happened? With most of us having zero experience coordinating a party, let alone handling CRE mechanics in a group situation, the runs would fail miserably. These runs would however prove that the damage was there, and we just needed to practice and coordinate the party. At this point in time, I was already dominating the Yeti Punch King rankings, at 689 points, occasionally interleaving Punch King runs with grinding. More farming would push me to level 212, and I would conclude the day by re-rolling my weapon to 2 lines 30% ignore defense. At the end of day 6, my stat was around 6.7k in damage gear. Day 7 started with yet another ding to level 213, as well as getting the alien necklace off stream. This was the last piece of the alien fragment set I needed, as the hat would have to be a lucky hat to retain the CRE set. The first cubing session of the day would push my alien necklace to legendary. In a crazy stroke of luck, this pendant would hit 3 lines strength, which was a very blast upgrade. Other gear would see slight improvements, with the U Garden ring hitting 12% and the NLC shoulder hitting 15%. Another level would go by on this day, putting me at 214. Later that day, we decided to attempt spawning a Phantom Forest Elite boss for a chance at Blackgate accessories, which gave me exactly what I needed, securing a Blackgate ring. Now up to 7.9k stat and 81.6% IED in bossing gear, I set out to attempt CRE again with the others. Rage, iframe.
Oh, no.
Remember all cures whenever you get hit. Up. Left side, everyone. Left. Stay left. Right side. Let's f***ing go. Let's go. Nice, good job everyone. Feeling confident about a practice mode queen clear, we would enter real mode and finally get a clear, securing our first piece of CRA gear. This fight was a huge learning experience, as we became familiar with the intended party mechanic of tanking the breath together to remove the fire DOT. Pierre, on the other hand, was still a disaster, requiring exceptional coordination and often ending up in pure chaos when trying to dodge the red clown. Eventually, we came up with the strategy of sticking together in the middle and then scattering to the edges of the map when he teleports. Another struggle with Pierre was charging up the rage gauge for Yetis. Dying means that you lose your entire gauge, and everyone else has to wait for you to hit the boss enough to charge it. Unable to see the hats on our characters, we would have to check the buff icon in the top right and communicate it, so that I could call shots on when we had enough red hats to burst. Day 8 was a maintenance day, but an eventful day nevertheless, with our very first Chaos Vonbon clear, after much practice coordinating snowman debuffs for better uptime. Play it safe, stay alive, let's f***ing go. Congrats everyone, good job everyone. Being only one CRE piece away from the 4 set, I could already taste the extra boss damage. On day 9, I reached level 215, and taking advantage of fever time, I 70% spell traced my CRE gear and finally wore it after transfer hammering, as well as tracing anything else that still needed work. Still not blessed with a Zakum eye accessory, I decided to make the U Garden eye accessory into temporary damage gear. Another ding would happen later that day, putting me at 216. Now at over 8k stat, I tried helping a party member get their CRE gear, but we ended up timing out in Bonbon as the other members were not available to run. The PR struggles continued as I repeatedly ruined good runs by bursting with the wrong hat out of muscle memory, as well as post-split coordination being an absolute mess. Okay, let's begin. Okay. Even if I fail both hammers, it's already good enough. Do it. Let's go. Okay, +6. Okay, chance time. Do it. Let's go. Chance time. Do it. Let's go. Let's go. Actually perfectly traced weapon. Insane. On day 10, I challenged the RNG gods. Using the masso I had been saving up for the previous 3 days, I attempted to 15% spell trace my weapon. A gamble that would pay off big time, finishing the weapon in around 500k traces or 500 mil. A massive damage boost that solidified my lead as the strongest Yeti. Level 217 would be achieved on this day, and the PR struggle would continue, with many close runs leaving the boss at a sliver of health. My stat window was now reading over 9.1k stat. Day 11 was a 1+1 Star Force event, and so after hitting 218 in a long farming session, I pushed all my gear to 12 stars. Throwing the remainder of my masso into cubes, I managed to make some small upgrades, with the Black Gate ring getting a bit more all stat and dex. I would also get 15% on the hat and 17% all stat on the belt, as well as a slight improvement on the top with some extra secondary stat. Day 12 would start off stream, with my raw ring finally reaching level 4. Hitting 219 after a few hours of farming, I went back to cubing and flaming, with a very productive session. Having finally gotten a Zakum Eye accessory, I got it to unique 15%. The Black Gate ring went legendary 18% with some all stat. Alien Earring rolled a very nice double prime, hitting 26%. Finally, I improved a bunch of flames with 72 strength on the top, 6 all stat, 15 strength and 30 dex on the eye, and 5 all stat, 18 strength and 18 dex on the face. Having finally broken 10k stats, I felt confident that we could brute force Pierre this time. Is everyone charged? Pay attention to the HP. Pay attention to huts. A bit more. Okay, stop. Okay, ooh, close. Middle. Middle right. Sides. Middle. Heal. Heal. Don't touch him. Burst. Snowman, okay. Let's go. Okay, stop. In an unbelievably lucky run, the stars aligned and every single hut was red. We burst down the boss easily, skipping the split phase entirely and finally completing the CRE set. I did some basic upgrades on my new pants with 64 strength and 4 attack on the flame, 70% scrolling and 6% epic potential. We would clear Queen again in just over 10 minutes, and finally all our party members had their hat. Vanban would go down in 6 minutes, completing the CRE top for everyone who didn't already have it. This was far from a first try kind of deal, as we kept dying out. It was a pretty chaotic boss fight, even with this much damage. Day 13 marked a major level milestone, as I hit level 220. Many upgrades would follow after farming almost 300 mil. The pants rolled 15% unique, your Garden Ring rolled 20% masso, giving me the option to reroll one of the other masso accessories for damage, and finally both the belt and the hat would hit all stat 2 lines with 20% and 18% respectively. This session would push me up to 11.4k stat. Day 14 marked the beginning of the haste event, a significant boost in my EXP rates. With the recent gear upgrades, I was also finally able to grind efficiently enough to hit 10k kills an hour rates, and so later that day I would hit level 221. Having previously spell traced my Empress Glove, I transfer hammered my 3 attack Bpot Vonley onto it. Flaming this ended up getting a really nice 5% all stat, 44 strength and 20 dex. After throwing some cubes at the main pot, I rolled a really lucky 8% crit damage and decent sharp eyes, which is exactly what I needed. The Black Gate ring and the alien belt would see a slight upgrade to proper 2 lines, and the hat would roll an insanely lucky 30% strength, one of the hardest 3-line stat potentials. Weapon would see a tiny improvement with an extra line of dex. Now over 12k stat, I would wrap up day 14 feeling good about the gains. Day 15 would push me to 12.7k stat, with 2 major upgrades. I would transfer the 10 strength B-Pot Von Leon shoe to Empress, which I then cubed to 21%. The rest of the cubes went to the Zekum Eye, pushing it to legendary 24%. The beginning of day 16 would rank another level up. Now level 222, I would successfully cube a Spear Glove for decent speed infusion, a nice boost for bossing. Weapon would improve slightly to 40 and 30 IED and 12 strength. Now almost 13.3k stat, I tested my damage on a Chaos Vellum solo attempt, timing out at around 30%. Maintaining good damage uptime is not easy when you play a meme class that attacks so slowly. On day 17, I began saving up Massa for the upcoming 30% off Star Force event, planning to push my weapon to 15 stars. Pushing past level 223, I spent this entire day just farming. On day 18, I finally dethroned the Pink Beans from Dojo with a floor 36 run at 13 minutes and 17 seconds. The Dojo Glove would be a massive damage boost for bossing, though not usable in Punch King as gear swapping was not allowed. We reran Pierre with a 14 minutes clear, helping the rest of the group finish the CRE pants. At this point, Quinn and Von Bun had become routine, going down to 6 and 3 minutes respectively. The grind continued through day 19, achieving level 224 off-stream. Teaming up with Bin Bin, one of the top Pink Beans, I would attempt Chaos Vellum again. Unfortunately, this fight is actually much more difficult as a team, as the targeting becomes unpredictable, so we kept dying out. 225 would be achieved on day 20, and after another long day of farming, I attempted Chaos Vellum again. This time as a trio with Bin Bin and Red Bean. We cleared in practice mode, but it was a disaster of a run and not everyone survived. And we never managed to replicate this clear in real mode. Days 21 through 24 would see a continuation of the relentless farming, gaining 2 more levels and entering day 25 at 227. This was the big day. 30% off Star Force, and after saving up over 3 bill, I was getting ready to top after reset. As an appetizer, I decided to reroll my inner ability, figuring I wouldn't need drop rate for anything else at this point. I landed 18% crit rate, which I decided to keep for the moment and check my crit rate situation later. The star forcing strategy would be to 16 stars and then transfer hammer from a pencilier, rather than safeguarding. Another sizable benefit to this strategy was the 3% attack B-Pot weapon that I had been saving for a while after revealing countless pencilier weapon drops that came with B-Pot.
Okay. Go on. Let's go. Easy 15 stars. Well, that's 15 stars. Well, now we need 16 though, because we need to transfer hammer, so it's not over yet. In before boom. Okay. Okay, 2 attempts. So let's do it.
The star forcing session would be exceptionally blessed, and after just over 110 mil spent, the weapon was complete. The cubing also went pretty well, rolling 40 and 30 IED again with crit rate in just over 500 mil. Figuring I had way too much crit rate now, I decided to reroll my inner ability again, landing on 17% boss damage and 5 abnormal status damage. The remainder of my Masso was used on the rest of the gear, gaining some all-stat on my shoulder, hitting a massive 27% on the pants, and 21% on the face. Many of my flames would see huge improvements, with 5% all-stat and 40 strength on the hat, a huge 6% all-stat and 52 strength on the shoe, 5 all-stat and 40 strength and 20 dex on the top, 4% all-stat and 60 strength on the bottom, and 5 all-stat and 15 strength and 30 dex on the face accessory. I concluded my cubing session trying to reroll my weapon for better lines, ending up with 40 and 30 IAD and 9 damage, which I kept, figuring I had enough crit rate after all. With my newfound strength, I attempted Chaos Queen solo, easily clearing in just 13 minutes. Pierre was also an easy solo, going down in 8 minutes and dropping a lucky hat. This opened up the possibility of going for the complete alien set, with a lucky hat counting for both CRE and alien. This would later turn out to not be the optimal setup for Punch King after some testing, but it was worth exploring. Van Ban would go down in a comfortable 10 minutes, and so I decided to attempt Chaos Vellum solo again. Unfortunately, I would time out, leaving the boss with a sliver of health.
Let's give it one more try. He's gonna fireball now. Nice. That's a nice jetpack. Takes like 10 years to rebuff. Oh, never mind. He's doing that. Heal, heal, heal. Okay. Oh, we killed it. Nice. That's a nice run.
Confident I could improve my damage uptime, I would try again, and sure enough, Chaos Vellum would go down in a minimum damage 18 minutes run. A massive achievement considering all the limitations of this server. At 14.5k stat, my gear was really starting to snowball at this point. Kicking day 26 off with level 228, I went back to the cycle of farming and cubing, trying to scrape together whatever gains I could with a few days remaining on the event. Some potentials would see improvement on this day, with 24% on the shoulder, 21% on the pink bean belt, and 21% on the dominator with 9 dex and 9 all-stat. My flames would also see huge improvements on this day, with 5% all-stat and 40 strength and 16 dex on the pink bean belt, 84 strength and 16 dex on the dominator, 71 strength and 20 dex on the Deocidus, 6 all-stat and 30 strength on the Zakum face, and finally 5 all-stat, 18 strength and 6 attack on the Zakum Eye. Day 27 was entirely dedicated to farming with no gear upgrading. And so I headed into day 28, as the last 24 hours of the event were approaching. After hitting 229, I decided to stop grinding and start squeezing whatever more damage I could out of my Maso. With 2.069 bill in my inventory, I started recubing all my Maso gear to damage, getting 24% on the Silver Blossom and 21% on the Deocidus. I also had a spare Silver Blossom ring, which I ended up transfer hammering to my U Garden ring for a 10 strength B pot. This ring would end up hitting 21% strength on the main pot. It was now time to test boss set versus alien set. The idea was to come up with a consistent test that was representative of the conditions in Punch King. We don't know for sure what the PDR on the Punch King is, but it's likely 250% or higher in the later stages. And so I did a BA, just spamming the main attack with Raw Ring equipped, but without actually using it. At 250 PDR, the alien set ended up being slightly worse. At 200% PDR, the two sets were closely matched, with the alien set being ever so slightly better. It was very clear that the boss set was significantly better, especially if the PDR went even higher than 250. Next up, I would do some last minute upgrades before the final Punch King attempts, rolling an absolutely insane 40 and 30 IED and 12 attack main pot on the weapon. With a bit more last minute cubing, I got my top up to 24% with 12 all stat, bringing my final stat up to 14.727k. I closed the day with a lot of Punch King attempts, trying to optimize my rotation. It's very important to pay attention to the cooldown of the shockwaves in Rage mode, so that you always proc them as soon as possible and weave long animations like the iframe in between them. My best attempt on this day before I wrapped up the stream would be 934. I was already the #1 in EU by a huge margin, but it wasn't over yet. My friend NNC Uwu over on the NA side was inching closer to my score despite having worse gear, thanks to his raw ring cooldown reset strategy, motivating me to try harder. The next morning, just a few hours before maintenance, I managed to get this run. $937 points, solidifying myself as the #1 Yeti across all regions for that version of the event. A score that would remain undefeated as the event would undergo major changes in the following years. Having nothing to lose, I tried pushing the weapon to a higher stat force and re-rolling my inner ability for cooldown skip, but I had no luck with either of those ideas. And that would mark the end of my 1-month journey, pushing this absolute meme of a class to heights that I never thought would be possible. This video has been a massive undertaking, combing through over 200 hours of footage to find all the key moments, and piecing together the journey has not been an easy task. But I had to do it. I had to do justice to this journey and showcase it in its full glory. A special thanks goes to everyone who participated in this journey, especially LQS Knight, who was a great coach and friend throughout this adventure. I also want to show my appreciation for all the support on the last video. If you have any ideas of content that you would like to see from me, just leave a comment below. Even if it's not something worthy of a documentary, I'll think about it. In the meantime, check out my YouTube shorts if you want to see more. And with that being said, I'm gonna go back to my 11k Legion grind, so I'll see you on stream. Remember to click like to help me reach more people, and have a good rest of your day.